Today I'm going to show you the process for making a boiled book. This is a process where you take paper and put leaves and plants and whatever flowers you want between the pages and boil them, and the plants and leaves transfer onto the paper, leaving these beautiful colors and beautiful shapes and patterns. Look very much like art, like you actually painted them on there, but they are just an accident of nature. And I'm going to show you the complete instructions how to do this, and then on the second video we're going to turn it into a book. Alright, I've collected a bunch of plants from the yard, various things. I found some work a lot better than others, and you can experiment. I found that this creeping black, or I guess it's blackberry or raspberry vine makes a great imprint. Ferns make really great imprints, and they make really neat patterns. The vines are really cool because the little vine itself will make an imprint, and then the leaves do too. I got some Spanish moss, which makes a really cool pattern. And if you have flowers, you can try them, but don't ever think that you're going to get the color out of the flower. Usually you don't, but you really get neat impressions. Now I've got these pages I've folded in signatures of just 2 sheets, folded in half. I've torn them all so they have a decal edge instead of a straight edge, and we're going to make stack this whole thing up with plants to make a book out of this. So the first thing you do is you have your cement board. This is a tile backer board. It's made out of cement, and you can use it over and over again. So the first thing is this page will need to be decorated, so I'm just going to put it on the backer board. And keep in mind that you want the interesting stuff to point towards the page. In this case, some of the more interesting stuff is the back of the leaves, because all the veins and everything in the leaf will make a better impression on the paper than the front of the leaf, which is smoother. Also, something to remember is to make the plants flow off the page, and that way there'll be a little gap there for the dye to get in and to kind of work its way, and you'll see how that works later. Okay, so that's the first one. I'm just going to call it done. Now I put this page on and just start laying on leaves. Had great results with maple. I'm going to put some maple leaves in this one. Here's a vine. Get it in there a couple of times. What's this? Yeah. This is wisteria. Alright, that's enough of that. Fold over to the next page. And just keep going. Fold over. These flowers here, you'll probably will never see any color out of them, but you're going to see the shape, and it's really pretty. Just keep pressing them down. We got some Spanish moss here. Just hope you don't get any red bugs. Don't need a lot. Oops. Some plants. And we're just about done with the first signature. Alright, and then so the next signature just lays right on top of that one. see how I've got the plants extending off the page, and that's a lot more interesting than if you try to actually contain it on the page, and you'll get some really great results with the color kind of flowing. This paper is a heavy cotton bond paper. It's got about 25% cotton content in it, and it's about 98-pound etching or printing paper. And I found that you want to have a heavy paper if you're going to put especially if you're going to put a lot of vegetation between the pages. You want something that's going to stand up to it, because a really flimsy paper would just tear right away. Alright, second signature done, and now we're going to do the rest of them, and then we'll come back when I've completed that. Alright, last page. Turn. I've got these really stuffed. I've got 4 of these signatures together. Try to line them up. And we'll just put some stuff on top here. Let's put this direction. Remember the interesting side for making the transfer is probably the back of the leaf more than the front. And now we put the other masonite board on there. Try to get it right in the center. And really push down on this. You can stand on it, get it nice and squashed first before you clamp. Make sure that the back is still on the center. And it's not quite, so just put it in the center. And now these are that's the hinge side. Let's get these a little bit closer to lined up. And when you do the clamping, on the hinge side, the first biggest mistake you're going to make, that I made with doing this, is clamping too hard. Now you don't have to use C-clamps. You can try whatever you got on hand or improvise. But the first thing I did was clamp these down like crazy, like I was doing woodwork or something, and that is not what you want to do. You don't want much clamping force at all, really. You just want it enough to kind of hold it together. Kind of, if you had a weight on it, it would be about the equivalent. You do not want to just clamp. What's going to happen if you clamp too much is that the pages will stick together where they touch, and some of the plants will just completely embed in the paper, and you won't be able to get them off without ripping the paper too. So I clamp a lot at first just to kind of get everything kind of squashed in. And then back it off until it's just loose like that. So it's holding it together, but it's not clamping it like crazy. Now all this stuff that's hanging off, just cut it back enough to just so it fits in the pot that you're using. Water boiling, and I'm going to add a cup of vinegar in there. White vinegar, cheap kind. That's going to be the mordant that holds the dyes into the paper. And we'll let that get boiling again. Okay, we got the water and vinegar boiling here, ready to put the book in, and you got this semi-loosely clamped. Let's get this one a little looser. I don't like the feel of that. Do not over clamp these. And put it in. Now, the first thing I do is let it boil for about 7 minutes with just the water and vinegar to make sure that the pages get completely soaked all the way in, all the way through. And then I add dye, and you don't have to do, the dye is an optional thing, because the plants will stain the paper anyway. We're going to let this go for about 7 minutes and then add the dye, and then we boil it for an hour and a half. So we'll be back in 7 minutes. It's been boiling for 7 minutes, and now I can be pretty confident that the pages are wet all the way through, and they got the just water and vinegar all the way through. The water's a little dark right now, and I think that's just from residual color that's come off from using this equipment over and over again, from the clamps and the cement board. I've got this red, blue, indigo dye that I used, and I really liked it. A little bit goes a long way, so one package of this is will do a lot of projects. Now it tends to loosen up a little bit after it's been boiling. With the water as dark as it is, it's going to be hard for me to tell when to stop adding this, but I'll just put a little in, and instantly the water becomes, you can't even see through it. It's opaque. That'll be enough of that. Just use the book to mix it right in and get a nice uniform color. It's the boiling action does that anyway. You can see the pages are turning blue at this point. But the neat thing is that dye will not get all the way in. It'll follow some of the plants, and it won't follow some of the plants, and it'll make a really neat overall effect. Without the dye, you'll still get color, but it's not as dramatic. You can try it with both and just see which you like the most for your purposes. I'm just turning this down to a kind of a little simmer, and that'll help it to not evaporate so fast. And we're going to leave it in for an hour and a half, and then we'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, this has been boiling for an hour and a half now. See how filthy and mucky it is from all the plants deteriorating, and looks like I used a lot more dye than I thought I was going to. So every time it's just a new surprise how it turns out, and we'll see how this turns out. Just get some of the water out of there. Transfer that over to this. Turn off the heat. Alright, now we're going to take this over to the sink. And take it apart. You can see how loosely those are clamped down there. Just not much force at all. Very easy to take them off. And what the process is to rinse and pull off the loose plants, and then rinse off the leaves and see what we got. So we'll do it, it's going to be quite hot. Watch out for the steam. Rinse that off. Take these, open it up. So you got to be careful, because this is where it's very delicate. Sometimes they'll stick together a little bit. And all I'm doing here is rinsing off the leaves, and the extra dye will come off, and you can start to see how beautiful that turned out. Put this on the side and rinse off the other one. Carefully take those up in case they're kind of sticking to the paper. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Little parts that are left you can wash off. And that's why you want to use a heavy paper that's got a lot of cotton content, because it will stand up to all this water and boiling and everything and still be in one piece. First signature. I like to keep them straight because they match. They have a mirror image, so you want to keep them together. So we'll just take these over to a towel. Just let them dry flat on the towel. Usually flip them over a couple times. Maybe put another dry towel out and transfer them over. Now the further inside the book you get, generally the less dye has been transferred. Those little leaves just rinse right off. If you had to sit and pick them off, you might go crazy. Alright, so that's the process. We're going to take these over to the towel and dry them off. We're going to rinse the rest of those off and then we'll be right back. A nice effect from the Spanish moss, all those little tendrils there. Look at the colors on that one, are beautiful. And there's that one. Alright, let's go put these on the towel and then that will be it for this batch. Yeah, I found that these dry pretty nicely. They're of course not completely flat or anything, but that's part of the effect is that they're a little bit curly, but they don't like curl up like potato chips. They stay nice and flat. You could bind these into a book, it'll look really good. And I'm sure all that depends on which paper you use, but for this paper it's working just fine. You can just see how beautiful those are. And we're done. Here is the finished result. You have, they've dried a lot lighter, as you can probably tell. I've got a lot of nice white space, off-white, but blank space on many of them. There'd be room enough there to write things or to draw or whatever. Also, some of them are just so beautiful, so deep, and the impressions are so art-like. They look like watercolors, really. Here's one with Spanish moss. It makes all those really neat patterns. You can see how it's white, and it doesn't impart any color in the paper, obviously, but it does make that great pattern. Here's bamboo. It left a nice kind of yellowish green color on it. Especially like this one, the dark in the center and then the light on the edges. You can also see how the blue dye bleeds in from the edges of the paper and then interacts inside of the page. And that's one of the reasons that we make the plants go outside and we hang off the edge of the paper, so that gives that blue dye a pathway to do that. And something else I found is that if you hold this up to sunlight or bright light, there's a lot of color inside of the paper that really doesn't show when you're just looking at the face of it. Really a beautiful little world in there of various colors, things that are not obvious without holding it up to the light. That's a neat thing to try. Each one is different. You never know what you're going to get until it's done. But you can plan if you need to leave a space for writing or space for a picture or something. You just don't put any plants there, and then you have lots of space where you need it. Now you're not. On the next video, I'm going to show you. We're going to make a book out of these pages that I just made. I hope you watch that to see how the book is put together.